Welcome to Life Design Diaries, the show that gives you permission to live your best life. And in this episode, we have someone who has been practicing just that for many, many years. Danny Flood is the creator of OpenWordMag, an online community whose mission is to inspire people to design their lifestyle and empower them with the tools to create their ideal life. Sounds very familiar to this podcast. Danny is a serial entrepreneur and author of many books, including Buy Your Own Island and his most successful book to date, Hack Sleep. Having been on the road for over 9 years whilst building these businesses, Danny has picked up some fascinating experiences and stories which we dig into in this episode. Now, we recorded this interview via Skype from each end of Thailand and didn't have too much time to arrange the perfect sound settings, and so some of the sound quality is not 100%. However, I enjoyed the conversation way too much not to share it with you. I got loads from this conversation and hope you guys do too. So please enjoy my conversation with Danny Flood. Okay, Danny, welcome to the show.
Hey Ross, it's good to connect with you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, a mutual friend of ours who's been on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, David Ralph, contacted me and said that I have to reach out to you because he actually said you're the master of lifestyle design. So obviously with our podcast being called Life Design Diaries, I thought definitely need to speak to this guy. So I kind of want to start really by just asking you, what does lifestyle design mean to you?
Well, first of all, it's very nice of David to say. I don't know if I'm really a master at anything, but I'm kind of more of a student. You know, I'm just dedicated to a path of lifelong learning and whatnot. So I've been without a home, I guess you call it a nomad, for about 9 years, I guess, although it's really difficult to count. I just looked through, I've had 3 passports, so I just looked through the recent ones, and I just arrived in Thailand a few days ago, so it's my 22nd visit to Thailand, which just blows my mind, in the last 5 years or so. And I'm at the point where I don't really even care about, money anymore, because I have so much, I have enough of it that I can basically do whatever I want for the next few years, whatever. So for me, it's really about pursuing my passion and living true to my essence every single day. And working on projects that I feel really interested in, working on things that are really going to be helpful to people, that are really going to bring value to the world. In terms of my career, that's where I'm at right now. That's the sweet spot for me. As far as my life and my lifestyle, it's just really being the architect and being able to engineer every single aspect of my life exactly the way that I want it. I feel tremendous freedom to be able to pursue anything I want to do.
Okay. What sort of exercises, or is it just a natural process for you to look at? And it sounds like in order for you to evaluate that, what you want to do with your life, how do you go about? I'm interested to hear about that process of actually almost thinking about and constructing exactly that lifestyle. Because and the reason I'm asking that is, I see a lot of people and I talk to a lot of people, and potentially, as day to day passes by, they don't get a chance, or they don't see it as their place to actually almost take control of that process, because they can be so busy into the day to day life. So how have you kind of taken that step back really, and thought that through?
Well, I think the thing is, you have to realize with someone like myself, I've been doing this for almost a decade, so I'm very in tune with what I need and what my needs are and what exactly I need to do to feel fulfilled. Anyone else that might have heard of this term called lifestyle design, but they don't really grasp it yet, they probably heard about it from some book, like 4 Hour Work Week or whatever else might be. Maybe you read my book, Buy Your Own Island, which I published a few years ago. But that's another person's idea of success. So it's not exactly authentic to what yours might be. Whatever you might read about in a book, or comparing yourself to someone else's success story, it really is not authentic to you. It's just, you're just comparing yourself to someone else. And whenever you have 2 egos put side to side, it's always going to lead to a lot of, what's the word? I don't know, disappointment, I guess. So part of it is not really, I've learned that I really need to make a concerned effort to discard my ego and really just kind of stop looking at myself as a person named Danny, because that was a label that was given to me, and see what really is my essence. What really do I feel at the core of my being is what I need to do. And when I focus on that, it just becomes very clear. I don't really have a lot of questions or whatnot. Because I always know what the next step is that I need to take in my life. It's always intuitively there. And sometimes I just need to take a step back from being busy, doing all this busy work and doing all of these things that don't really align with my goals. And if I take a moment to just quiet my mind and just step back, the answer's always there for me.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what does success look like for you then?
Success is something you build every day. It's about tending to yourself first and your own needs. And I do that every day. So every day I feel successful because I don't, I can give you a very detailed answer, but basically it's a concept, like failure, success is a process. It's a progression of learning. It's a path that you take as an individual. And every path that each person takes is unique to them. And I don't look at anything as a failure in my life. If I try something and I learn from it, it's very valuable. It doesn't matter what the result is. So I just try to make sure that I give my best effort at everything I do. And as long as I learn from it, it doesn't really matter. If I publish a book, I don't care if it makes $10,000 or $100, because I put out something valuable out there. I learned a lot from the process, and it's in line with my mission. So I published, I don't know how many, 7 books now. I don't even check how much money they're making, And I got, 5 other books that I plan to publish in the next few months here. And how much, what monetary result I get from it, it doesn't really matter, because I know this is something valuable and it's in tune with my purpose. It's in tune where I want the direction of my life to go.
So we've had a few people recently get in contact with us and ask us questions such as, how do we stay balanced in this, busy world? And how do we kind of stay centered as a couple in terms of what we're doing in our life and from a relationship perspective? But it sounds like you've got you're very centered in knowing what you want. And you talk about dropping your ego. And that, that really comes across as you've got a lot of balance in your life. Is there have you always had that mindset, or is that changed as you've been living this lifestyle now?
Well, I read this book. It's called Autobiography of a Yogi, and it's the best book that I've ever read in my life. And it was the one book that Steve Jobs read every single year. He read it first when he was a youth. He actually traveled to India because he wanted to meet one of the Babas. And basically what I've realized recently is that it's my own ego that's causing me to fall into a cycle of unhappiness, of disappointment, of a constant struggle. Because Danny and all of the things that are attached to Danny, he has this identity and all these things that he has to fulfill. Yeah. And as long as you put your faith in these things, as long as you put your faith in arbitrary moving targets, whether it's income or other people or relationships, there's always going to be a disappointment at some point, because nothing lasts. Nothing in the physical world lasts. So what I've been trying to do is kind of go inside in a more spiritual sense and connect with the source, connect with the creator, because that's something that's firm. It's something that's eternal, that lasts. And that helps me to shed my ego. And I don't even see myself as a person named Danny anymore. I just see myself as a soul inhabiting a body, no different than you, no different than anyone else on this earth. And it helps me to not become caught up in those struggles, not caught up in that constant fight. And it makes me realize that it really crystallizes my purpose here on earth.
Yeah, I love that. And do you have any daily practice to almost remind yourself of that? Or is that just, do you live and breathe that every single day?
I would say read that book first so that you understand. And once you have this understanding, any exercise that you might do, any practice, whether it's meditation or yoga, it's merely to help reinforce a concept. So what it is helping to reinforce an understanding. So once you have a firm understanding, you don't actually have to do these kind of practices to bring yourself back to that again. It's something that will help you. But yes, on a daily basis, I do tend to self-care before I tend to anything else. I want to make sure that spiritually I'm in the right place before I sit down to work. And I have different rituals that I do. Like I'm really into dancing, for example, and I do a lot of breathing exercises. Sometimes I do meditation just to. I really practice mindfulness. Like I just spent 2 months in India, and India pushes you to the limits. Basically, like your patience is going to be tested every single day. And so I see this like baser version of me come out, and it's like feels like I just want to snap at this stupid bus driver, because or this bus operator, because they're packing. We got stopped by the military on one bus trip because we had 7 people on the roof of the bus. They're packing people into these buses like sardines. Like you can't imagine how uncomfortable it is to be traveling on one of these buses for 9-10 hours. And, I'm proud of myself because even though I was in that state, in that weak state, I was able to observe myself from a third person perspective and be able to practice mindfulness.
Yeah. It's probably worth giving our listeners a little bit more context then about your background and how you've arrived at where you are today. So do you just want to give an overview really of your story, your career, and kind of what's led you to where you are now?
Well, like I said, I'm a person who was born as Danny Flood, and I've never had a job in my life. I've tried a couple of attempts at traditional employment, but never really lasted for longer than 1 month or so, I would say. Mm-hmm. And my first business, it was like started when I was about 8 years old. I was going around knocking on doors and taking out trash for people. Working for tips, basically. And a few years after that, I had a POG business, which was like a fad back in the 90s. And just been, starting one type of business idea after another. And after I got my degree, I somehow managed to get an associate's degree in advertising, and I started my own advertising agency. And then a few years after that, I was traveling around, working about 2 hours a day, and just taking one-way tickets, one-way trips to everywhere. And that was maybe 5-6 years ago. So I sold my interest in that business, and ever since then, I've just been doing whatever I want to do, basically. And like I said, this is my 22nd trip to Thailand, so I've been a nomad for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's been about 4 continents now. So basically, I just go where I want to do what I want to do. And lately, I've been doing a lot of public speaking. So I find that mixing some public speaking, doing workshops when you travel is a good way to get more out of traveling, and it's led me to places that I would not have otherwise probably gone to.
Yeah. And how have you found? Lucy and I are 6 months into our nomadic lifestyle after leaving the UK. So, for us at the moment, it's trying to find a sort of work-life balance, how we behave when we go into each country, how we actually don't spend the time always working or don't spend the time always just traveling. So, we're learning a lot day by day. So how have you found it? I mean, it's been so long for you now, living this lifestyle. How would you kind of summarize it?
What I find that is I'm a lot different in my 30s now, because I'm a lot more selective about what I do, I guess. And maybe it comes down to experience, so 6 months, for example, that's really kind of a honeymoon period as far as traveling is concerned, because everything is a novelty. But I feel that these days and maybe it's because I've had experience doing a lot of things, and I'm more selective about what I do and what I don't do. And I know like the kind of things that are just not going to be an effective use of my time. I do have one exercise that I wrote about in one of my books that's called the productivity pyramid. And I do find it to be a helpful framework if you want to learn how to organize and delegate your time. And there's 4 levels of the productivity pyramid. So there's the bottom 2 tiers are 0 value activities and low dollar per hour activities. These might be things like browsing news feed, using social media. I have a blocker on my Facebook, so I can't even read my news feed on my laptop. Negative.
And why have you done that, just out of interest?
It has no value to me. Just like a lot of other activities, And, I worked with one startup guy several years ago in Saigon, and, I came up with all these different logo concepts for him and stuff. And he told me, look, you're just spending too much time on that. You're making a big deal out of something that's really small. And this guy's a really, really successful entrepreneur. I can't give his name on here because he wouldn't like it, but he's launched, 7-figure companies. And it's just like helping me understand, like, okay, this is something that I should not be taking a lot of time to do. Like I'm pretty confident that in the next 2 months I'll be able to publish 5 different books because I know exactly how to publish them, and I have other authors working on them as well.
Yeah.
So, like I had another problem that I had to deal with today, and I just went to Upwork and I created a job post, and it's like, okay, I'll just pay someone to do this because it's not an effective use of my time. So, like I said, so there's low dollar per hour activities that, you can easily eliminate, or you can outsource them if you need to keep doing them. That's one of the best business decisions you can make, if you can get an assistant that will take care of these repetitive, time-consuming tasks for you. And then the third level is high dollar per hour activities. And then the fourth level is high lifetime value activities. So for me, like, high dollar per hour activities, like things that bring greater leverage. So public speaking, for example, is a good use of my time because I can build a lot of great professional relationships that way. High lifetime value activities, these are things that I talk about, tending to self-care, like going to the gym, meditation, eating healthy foods, things like this. So you take all the time, all the effort that you expend, and then you divide it into these 4 categories. That can be a helpful framework if you're just trying to get started.
Okay. Just looking at some of the specifics, you've mentioned quite a few books now. So people might be wondering as they're hearing this, you said that you don't worry about money anymore. You're pursuing exactly what you want to do. But there is also, there may or may not be, it'd be interesting to hear your perspective, but just how are you funding this and the finances that sit behind? Because obviously that's a big stress for a lot of different people. So how are you, what businesses have you got at the moment that are able to sustain your life, and your lifestyle?
Well, I guess it just depends how many lines you have in the ocean, how many fish you catch. So I have, multiple things out there. I have books, I have courses, I created a membership website. I've done basically everything, Ross. I had many different income streams. I've been part of the sharing economy. I've done Airbnb, and I've done tours for people that use Airbnb. I've done. I have clients now, so the clients provide a good stable base of income and recurring income each month. So that provides a significant sum. Most of that work it's basically completely automated and delegated at this point. So basically I just have to cash the invoices every month, which is nice. So that provides a substantial windfall. And I have other products. I have affiliate income, different things like this. But it's really just a process of doing and creating. So one aspect is creating something, and then the other aspect is marketing it. So if you do those 2 things, you may not become a millionaire overnight, but at least you can get started.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear, because I think the understanding that to get those things going, you have to create something. It sounds so obvious, in retrospect that you have to actually create things. But if you look at actually a big percent of the population across the world, they are not creating things themselves. So what it sounds like you've done there is by actually putting out your own products and creating things for yourself. And there's people listening to this podcast as well that I know want to start that process. At the moment, they're probably employed, and they want to do something for themselves, and they're kind of looking for inspiration or knowledge or tips on how to actually do that. So how would you, what advice would you give to those people? Because it sounds like forever, from a very early age, you've been a creator.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think that the greatest single source of leverage, or the greatest source of disempowerment, is the person's own mind. And so it's really about, it's a complex question. But I feel like a lot of people are kind of living mentally inside of a box, as it were. Mm-hmm. And they need to be able to step forth from that paradigm, whether if they have these disempowering self-beliefs that are holding them back from being able to take action and to be able to stick with something. Because you need to be willing to fail at least 200 times per day if you really want to succeed at something. That's the goal that you should shoot for. Yeah,
no, that's fascinating. I've written a blog post recently about my number one goal for last year was to fail more, and that's purely because of recognizing just how much you get from failing. So it's interesting to hear you say that you should aim to fail 200 times per day. This interview may be the catalyst for someone if you're talking about that paradigm shift, but is that something that you read? How did you learn that just that mindset? Because that is a completely different mindset for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. And I'll kind of help explain how I arrived at this conclusion. First of all, I saw a audio interview with Benny Lewis. He has a blog called Fluent in 3 Months. And he kind of gave me that idea of failing 200 times a day if you want to learn. And, like, what's your number one hack for learning? He said, fail 200 times a day. And in terms of how this applies to business, the secret to growing a business is very, very, very simple. All businesses grow from conversations. Every single business grows from a conversation, whether it's an email, whether it's a call such as this one, whether it's an advertisement that you put out onto Facebook. You're having a conversation with people, basically. So you need to be able to create enough conversations that are going to make your business grow. And so if you're able to try and fail at least 200 times a day, at least try to start 200 conversations per day, then your business is always going to have conversations happening around it. It's always going to have prospects. It's always going to have people that might be interested, but maybe they need to get more information. And that's when you provide it. It's no different. And every single advertising medium is the same. It's the same as if you knock on a door, you start a conversation. It's the same as if you send an email and you just try to replicate that exact kind of conversation that you might have when you knock on someone's door, or if you send them something in the mail, whatever it might be. You're basically initiating that conversation. So if you're trying to initiate 200 conversations per day, it's really hard to fail at business, as long as you have a conversation that makes sense, right? Because I talk to some startups and I talk to some people and they don't have clarity. So like I was consulting with one startup before this call, and like the logo is like a picture of an egg. Like I'm not even lying. It's for an app. And it's like a sunny side egg, and the app is for travelers. And it's something about like helping travelers find self-actualization. And I'm like, I can't seem to piece these three things together here. Like, what is it you're actually trying to do?
Yeah.
It's like going into your yard, and you see like a snake, and then you see a UFO, and then you see a purple dinosaur, and you're like, okay, these three things are related somehow, but I can't quite figure it out. That's exactly how I feel when he's trying to describe his business to me.
Yeah, yeah. So, and what advice do you give? I mean, how do people find that focus and that clarity?
Well, I would say check out my book, Dr. Growth, on Amazon. The first few chapters of that book will help you to understand how to create a powerful marketing message. But basically, first you need clarity. You need to be able to understand your market. So you need to start having those conversations, like I said, with the people that are your ideal prospects. So you need to find a way to, interview them for a podcast or get them on a Skype call. Try to figure out what it is their biggest struggle might be, what their problems are, how you can help them through whatever it is you have to offer. Maybe you're a freelancer, maybe you're a programmer that wants to create an application, maybe you're a writer that wants to create a book that will help them. So try to understand what those motivators are, what those sensitive issues are, and then learn how to speak to them in a language that they understand. So one aspect, you have your message you need to create. Second aspect is your market. You need to define your market and be very narrow about exactly who you're helping. And then the third aspect is the media that you use to reach that market with your message.
Yeah.
So It's just those three things.
Yeah. And I've got a similar experience. I mean, it sounds like you're consulting quite a few app companies at the moment. And that's what I did in my previous role, is consult for companies that are looking to build apps. And one of the things I found is that it's along this similar lines, that they would put a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of time and money into designing and building an app without actually doing some of those fundamental things you just mentioned, which is understand the target audience first of all, and then understand how you're going to service them. So other than is that I take it you find that a lot.
Well, they lack clarity. Your message should carry the clarity of sparkling spring water. It should be extremely easy to understand. When they go to your website, they should know exactly what it is, what it does, and who it's for. And if I go to one of my workshops and I ask my audience, to describe about their business, and they'll just go on and on and on for, they won't stop until you stop them. and they can go on for 5 minutes trying to describe their business. And by that point, you're already bored. You've lost the interest of every single person in that room.
Yeah.
So if you can't describe, what it is you do in 30 seconds and get people excited about it, you need to go back to the drawing board. And the way that you do that is called the 4 a.m. test. If you wake up your ideal prospect at 4 in the morning and say, deliver your message, this is exactly what this product does, are they going to want to get up and download it immediately? Are they going to want to say, okay, I need to get that. Thank you for letting me know. Or are they going to say, Ross, it's 4 in the morning. I just want to go back to bed. I've got work in the morning. And if you're failing that 4 a.m. test, then you need to find a way that you can strengthen your message or strengthen the offer so that it has greater incentive.
Yeah. Well, an interesting way to look at something. And actually, talking about 4 a.m., I've in just doing some research before this call, I've seen a lot that you are talking a lot at the moment about sleep, potential problems you have or solutions. So, just quite a general question. I just want to ask you about what's your message really on the subject of sleep and getting better sleep.
A few years ago, I published a book called Hack Sleep. And financially, it's been my most successful book to date. There's a lot of people out there struggling with sleep. And I've been toying with the idea of kind of almost being like a sleep coach. Right. But I don't really know how I'd make the business model work. But
well, you've done a lot about the subject. I was interested because it just made me realize as I dug deeper and deeper into seeing more about sleep, the one thing I just said to myself is amazing. There really is almost a niche or, a narrative for doing something on such small subjects. I mean, sleep is actually, obviously it affects everyone. It's a big deal, but I just wouldn't have thought, it doesn't come the first thought in my mind that you would be able to build a narrative, even to the point, like you said then about being a sleep coach. I'm sure there are sleep coaches out there. So I was just really interested to see.
Not enough, clearly.
Yeah.
If you don't sleep well, then it's like a Pandora's box that opens up a variety of different problems.
Yeah.
And the thing that people don't understand is that our minds tend to work in a linear fashion where, A plus B equals C. The problem with sleep is that it's such a complex process with so many different components that it's not something that can be easily fixed. It can be, but it requires an understanding of the different processes at work. So, for example, there's a chemical called adenosine. There's another one called melatonin. There's another one called cortisol, serotonin. So there's different chemicals in the brain that each have their own role and function. So melatonin, for example, you can't have any access to light after sunset. No electronic lights. You use candles instead. You need to have lots of sunlight during the daytime. From the moment you wake up at noon, you need to go outside to get a lot of sunlight. Releases serotonin, makes you awake, and also helps you produce melatonin at night. It adjusts your body clock. Because our body clocks are not 24 hours, they need to be adjusted every single day. Another one is adenosine. So adenosine is fatigue. So when you have a difficult work, when you go to the gym, you accumulate more adenosine. And adenosine makes you feel tired. It helps you fall asleep at night. Melatonin production begins at 9 p.m. So that's another chemical that begins secreting into your mind at 9 p.m. And there's ways you can engineer that as well. So for example, every day I eat pineapple, because pineapple increases melatonin production. And I don't believe in, these sleep aids or supplements. I think they're very harmful, and I don't know if there's no proof that it actually delivers the payload. So these are some examples, right? So sunlight exposure, light exposure is a big one. Getting enough melatonin at night, reducing cortisol. Cortisol is stress in the body, so stress doesn't only live in the mind, it also stores itself in your body. So, being able to get that relaxation is very important. So I came back from India, and I had a lot of pain in my back and in my shoulders. And so I've been basically getting massage every day since I've been back. And I went to the gym yesterday, and I felt so amazing after my workout, because I haven't worked out in a month and a half. And just from the process of movement, I can get rid of a lot of that harmful energy that I've been storing in my body. Yeah. So it's a lot of different things, Ross, but the good news is that if you tend to these things, it makes every aspect of your life better. You perform better mentally, physically, you sleep better at night. It makes everything better. And if things are out of sync, it disrupts everything.
Yeah. And what would you say is the most effective change that people can make if they are struggling with sleep?
Well, it depends on the situation. I was just, like I said, in India for 2 months, and I was on these buses every day almost, and I was pretty stressed out. You can't go anywhere in India where people are not honking at you constantly, and you just get tired of hearing these horns.
Yeah, we've just come from Vietnam for a month, and it was chaos on the roads, and it's just non-stop, isn't it?
Vietnam is tame compared to India. So basically, in that aspect, in that situation, this is creating a lot of stress that I can't really escape from. So my efforts are focusing on reducing that stress. And like I said, for a month I didn't even work because it wasn't even worth my time to try to work because I was in such a poor state. It's like I felt like I was on the verge of snapping. So I was really focusing more on meditation and taking time off, relaxing, not allowing myself to feel stressed. If someone's in a different situation where, for example, let's say they wake up at night. You go to sleep at a normal hour, but you wake up at 4 a.m. and you can't go back to sleep. That's because you're not getting enough melatonin production. So you need to get more melatonin, whether you eat pineapple, whether you eat bananas, they can also help. Whether you get more sunlight during the day, whether you wear glasses at night so that you don't block melatonin production. Mm-hmm. If you wake up, if you fall asleep too late, either your body clock's not adjusted, so you need to get more sunlight when you wake up in the morning, adjust your body clock. Or maybe you're not getting enough adenosine during the day. So maybe you need to exercise, for example.
But how much, the exercise one is definitely the one I could point to as helping. But a lot of the things you said there are quite sort of scientific, looking at the actual bodily reactions to different chemicals and things. But how much, when I say about the number one thing, is stress just absolutely, the sunlight could be a factor, all of these different things that you just mentioned could be a factor, but is stress like 90% of it in most cases? Or so one thing I could absolutely point to is, the rise of social media and the fact that people now are just never away from their mobile phones. Is that really, really interrupting sleep, especially as people are normally scrolling through the feed whilst they're in bed?
The problem with this concept of sleep is that the average person does not understand the correlation between why they can't sleep and what the actual cause of it might be. So a person that has, not really much stress at all, might find themselves unable to sleep. But you might not be able to pinpoint down to a single thing. It can also be the environment that you're in, Ross. If you're in a city environment, obviously you're going to be sleeping a lot later because you're constantly exposed to electronic light. In the last 100 years, we sleep 1 hour less on average as a human species because of the invention of the light bulb.
Right.
So if I'm in a countryside, like if I'm in some small city, I find that I pass out by like 8 or 9 p.m., and I'm sure you've experienced the same. Mm-hmm. Because it's a different way of life, basically. It's, everyone is... It's the context of your environment. It's the exposure to electronic lighting. It could be the pace of the life there. It could be due to a variety of different factors. So I wouldn't say that it would be due to one thing. I think that's I would be giving a false, bad advice if I said that. Yeah. But I would say that there's different things that you can try. So for me, for example, I had a big problem where I was waking up every night at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and I just started eating pineapple in the afternoons, and then that fixed it for me. So depending on what the symptom is, there could be a solution. But if you want, more information, fortunately I have a book. You can just look up Danny Flood on Google. You'll find my Amazon page, or Danny Flood Hack Sleep. And it's a pretty light read. I think the book's about 90 pages, I want to say, and it's maybe 7 chapters, and you'll find everything you need there.
Okay, fascinating. Okay, I want to switch the conversation a little bit now onto travel. Now, you mentioned that you've been in India for the last, was it 6 weeks? Just talk through why. It sounds like that you must have known going into that the kind of experience that you were going to have. It sounds like a stressful one, a challenging one. So why have you been in India?
I've been to Thailand 22 times now. I've been to Malaysia probably about almost 20 times, I would say. I've been to basically every country in East Asia and Southeast Asia multiple times, Central America multiple times, Latin America, every country multiple times. So
you're running out of countries.
there is no real novelty for me anymore. And if I want novelty, I need to go to a place like India, because India has more to offer as a country than probably anywhere on earth. It's like if you visited Rome and it was still ancient Rome intact to this day, or Babylon or ancient Egypt, it survived intact. Indian culture has survived intact for thousands of years. So it has a lot to offer in terms of the culture, in terms of spirituality, in terms of food. It's a place to go for a proper adventure. But after maybe 1 month of that, it's about what I can take, and then I want to go back to the modern world. So I did spend a little bit longer than advisable. But I did find that, I was also, like I said, combining public speaking opportunities. So I did about 5 public speaking opportunities across India. And I found that to be a great experience. I think that India is a source of great potential in the startup scene, in entrepreneurial scene. So if you want to do business, I think it's a great place to do business. And I think one of the best ways, like I said, to make those opportunities happen is through public speaking. So if you're a nomad or you want to be a nomad, I would just, go around and contact these co-working spaces. They're all over the place, in India, any country, and just offer to do a workshop on your area of expertise. And, you'll have a lot of your potential prospects in one room. You'll build a lot of relationships with like-minded people that way. And it's a way to grow your business when you travel. And, these co-working spaces are always doing events. Often they'll let you use their space for free in return. It's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And now you say you're in Bangkok. How long are you planning to be here for in Thailand?
Bangkok has become home over these last few years. So I just come back here. My intention is to get healthy again and to set my affairs in order. For the next 2 months, I have about 5 different goals that I want to complete in terms of work. So I just want to get those done immediately and see what the next chapter will bring. So that might take me another 2 or 3 months. So for example, I told you about one of those projects, which is I plan to publish at least 5 books in the next 2 months.
Okay. Have you started any of them? How far through are you? That sounds like a big challenge.
Well, the thing is, so basically it's a book, but it just needs to be translated into several different languages.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a language guide. So I have different people that I've assigned to help me with that. But then there's other things, so I've got like one physical product that I want to create. So I have a partner in India that's going to be creating a prototype. So I'm just kind of here, I just want to get some things done. I have my goals written down on paper, and every single day I just want to do things that align with those 4 or 5 goals that I've set for myself. And it's really as simple as that, Ross. Life is simple until we complicate it, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And you talk about goals. What sort of process do you use to actually set your own goals, and how often do you do that?
It just depends when I arrive at a certain point in my life. One of my goals. People don't really know what success looks like from the inside. They see things from the outside and they say, "Well, that guy's really successful."
But comparing.
Exactly. But the thing is, I went to India my main reason for going to India was because I wanted to be in a Bollywood video. Because I make, dance videos everywhere I travel. And
okay.
So I did contact some casting, talent scouts and stuff when I was there. But, I did like these audition videos and everything. But we need you to come to South Africa in 2 weeks and blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, sorry, you didn't get the role. So in that aspect, I did fail in my initial goal. But I did make all these other wonderful things happen while I was in India. I spoke in front of one audience was like 600 people at a hackathon that I got invited to. Nice. So even though I succeeded at a lot of different things, like my initial goal was to be in a Bollywood dance video. And so I failed at that, but I succeeded in other ways.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of goals look like, I kind of have like some goals, like what I want to do, what really I feel is worth doing. And sometimes I don't hit the moon, but I still fall among the stars.
But it really sounds like, because you talked about dropping your ego and just being happy with who you are. It sounds like even though you go through the process of goal setting, the understanding that you have, that you'll learn along the way, even if you fail those goals, it's quite a refreshing perspective.
Yeah, it is. And, my goals are really quite practical, actually. There's something that I know that I can achieve, like, in 1 month or 2 months, so like as far as like my consulting business, my client-based business, like if I have, let's say I come back to Bangkok and I lost like 3 clients when I was in India, I'll just set a goal like, okay, in the next 2 months I want to get 5 more clients. Mm-hmm. And if I focus on it every day, I can come up with solutions and help me get exactly that. So I'm not really like trying to make $1 million here. I'm just setting practical goals, and I know that I don't really need very much to fund my lifestyle and sustain myself. Whenever I start from scratch, when I started from scratch like a few years ago, my goal was to make $1,000 a month, because I know that $1,000 a month is more than enough to live in Thailand.
Yeah.
And I was able to achieve that in a relatively short time. If I was at zero again and I wanted to do that again, to get to $1,000 a month, I could do that in a much shorter time now, because I know exactly what to do. But my point is that don't like try to say like, okay, this guy Grant Cardone is making like $100 million a year or something. Like, how can I get to this point? No, just start out with something that's easy to reach. It's like trying to study Mandarin, and you want to be an expert in the first week. It's not going to happen. You just need to get some encouragement. You need to start out as a beginner.
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially when you take like a global perspective, as you said there. $1,000. The majority of the audience listening to this will be English or American. So $1,000 might be a lot, but it might not be anywhere near as much. Certainly not to be able to sustain the lifestyle that you can have in Thailand when you just take the global perspective. And the thing is now with travel now and tech, that those options are available. We're right here, Lucy and I, in Chiang Mai now, and those options are absolutely available. And it's one of the reasons, as for us to produce this podcast, is just to show people and talk to other people about just what other options there are available. Exactly. Because £1,000, $1,000 can absolutely give you a great lifestyle in a different country. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many different things I can say to this. Like, my first book was called Buying Your Own Island, and in that narrative, these 8 guys like came together and pitched in, actually bought their own island, and they realized that, look, this was like a lifelong dream that I had, was to own my own island, and they made it happen in like a week or two, because they had a plan, they had a practical plan, and they just called up a few of his friends. He literally found an island for sale on Kijiji, which is like Canadian Craigslist. Right. And they were able to set up their own country on that island. They had a prime minister, they had a foreign affairs minister, all these things. Basically built their lodgings.
What a goal.
Yeah. So exactly. That. So I'm actually considering, buying like a few properties here in Thailand and a couple other places. So basically, I just want to. Maybe with my brother or a couple of friends, basically like we're going to invest in some properties together, and that really reduces the cost a lot, for example, and the risk. I could easily afford to just buy a condo if I wanted, but I would rather maybe just share that with someone. So I'm doing a lot of collaboration these days. So I have partners for different ventures, and honestly, it doesn't matter to me whether I give up 50% of the venture. Because I have different lines in the sea, like I said.
Yeah.
But my point is that it's basically taking big goals, and basically breaking them down and making them something practical that you can act on now, and you can make it happen in the next few months.
And actually get started. Absolutely. Okay. I just want to ask you one more question then, Danny, and that is, what is your number one message to the world? What is the message that you want to spread to everyone listening?
Ooh, the number one message. Well, I would say that whoever you think that you are now is basically what you've conditioned to believe who you are over a combined set of experiences over however old you might be, 28 years from now. But you have the potential to reinvent yourself and become anyone that you truly wish to be at a moment's notice. like I talked about, getting rid of the ego. It's like shedding the old skin and becoming something new. So if you want to really look at your life from a new perspective, you need to be able to step outside of that box mentally that we mentioned, and being able to step into another paradigm. So that might be like, if you've been living in the UK for 30 years, go to China or go to Argentina or something and experience a new beginning, and see what, once you've shed all of those old trappings of your old self, that old ego, see what you discover, see what it is that you're actually keenly interested in, what you're passionate about, and see how these new discoveries can empower you and become a person that you really feel comfortable being.
Just before you head off, as well as our podcast, you can also hear from our short email, The Design Drop. Every Friday, you'll get an email with interesting resources, things that we've been pondering, things that have helped us that week, such as book recommendations, online tools, and gadgets. It's a quick, easy, light-hearted email to round off your week. If you're interested, head over to lifedesigndiaries.com to sign up.